Abundant Grace International School, we are located right in Obuasi, precisely BDM. The school has a number of facilities that aid in learning. We have qualified and trained teachers who are ready and willing to assist the children. The school has many facilities such as the ICT laboratory. We also have a science laboratory. We also have a library. The school has a number of buses which convey the children from their various destinations to the school premises. We have the football team, we have the drama group, we have a lot, and the school is based on the Christian principles. For more inquiries, you can call this number 0541 310 901 0541 670772. Abundant Grace, in God we trust. Okay, today we are here again, and I will take you through one aspect of English language, that is reading comprehension. When we are reading, we study or we decode a text we have studied. When we are reading, that is when we are decoding a text we have studied. That is what we call reading and comprehension. In school, our teachers test our knowledge or test our understanding of a text. Due to it, they give us a text to read, and the text will be followed by a set of questions for us to answer. Today, we are going to know how to answer comprehension questions. How to answer comprehension questions. One is scheme. One is scheme. One is scheme. When we say scheme, what do we understand by scheme? Scheme is reading quickly through the text to get the general aim of the scheme of the text. When you say the general, you read to get the basic or the general idea of the text. So when you are skimming, that is when you are reading quickly. Here you read quickly to get the general idea or the basic idea of the text. That is what we mean by skimming. Then we move to another one. That is the second one. That is the scan. When we say scan, it's when you read well to get the actual idea of the text. Here, you are not reading it like the first one to get the main idea, but here you are reading it well. That is, you read it thoroughly to get the actual or the factual idea of the text. You read it to get the actual or the factual idea of the text. That is when we mean by scan. So when you are scanning, you just don't read quickly, but you read it well to get the actual idea. What is the meaning of the text, or what does the text say? You read it. That is when you are doing the scanning. Then after you have scanned, you make sure, or you be convinced with yourself that the text that you read, you really understand it. That is, be assured that you have understood the text. So you have to be convinced or be assured with yourself that this text that I read, I understood everything that was being written down. So if you don't understand, or if you did not read it well, if you don't understand, you read it well and carefully. If not, read it well and carefully. That is, if you didn't understand the text, you read it well and carefully as well. So if not, read it well and carefully. That is, when you're saying carefully, you study each word. The word that you are reading, you study it very well to know, make sure that this time there, I understood what I read. Then after that, you move to answer questions. You move to the set of questions that that the text requires you to answer. When you are tackling the questions, first you tackle the questions that the answer can be derived directly from the passage. You tackle the questions whose answer can be derived directly from the passage. That is when you answer questions. Answer those ones that can be derived from the passage directly. That is the first one. After that, you move to questions that demand inference or predictions. Another step that is questions that demand inference or predictions. Make exact prediction based on the ideas acquired from the text. That is when you are giving your prediction should not be outside the box, but it should come from the information that is being derived from the question. So the information you are going to give us as your answer must be derived from the question or the passage that you read. This is how we answer a comprehension questions carefully or directly. This is how we answer a comprehension questions. Now we are going to read a text. So we are going to read the text using all these principles. We are going to read the text, and after reading the text, we will have some set of questions that we will answer based on the text that we are going to read. So the text that we are going to read, we will use the scheme, we will use the scan, we will be convinced with ourselves, we answer questions that already derive the answer from the passage, then we make the inference on the passage or the text as well. So let's read the text. Let's read the text. That is, read part B. That is when you are answering the English questions. We have part A, part B. Part A is the essay part, then part B being the comprehension part. Here, the question says, read the passage below carefully. Look at the word carefully and answer all the questions that follows. So you read it well so that you can answer the questions that follows. Let's read it. This case of David Akinde drives home the point that nobody should be written off as a failure as long as he has not died. As far as I can recall, he was one of the weakest in the class throughout our primary school career. Right from the second grade, he was the butt of most of our jokes. Indeed, whenever the teacher referred the question to him, most of us waited eagerly to have a good laugh. That is what we do at times in school. But we all admire him for two things. For one thing, he was the only one who's never wrote with the right hand, as he was a complete southpaw. Then he endured all jokes cheerfully and indeed referred to himself as Mr. Y. Hurry. Forever sociable, he was a friend to everybody who came close enough. Not surprising, we left him behind a primary school as he could not get admitted to any of the secondary schools to which he took an admission examination. That's why from the time I entered the secondary school, I lost contact with him. Nor did any of my mates whom I closely associated with ever mention meeting him anywhere. As far as most of us were concerned, David had faded away into obscurity. I imagine that he must have ended up in one of the low-grade vocations, since he was at least good in handicraft. Then we read the second part. Then a few months ago, 38 years after I last saw him in the primary school, while I was watching a 9 o'clock television network program, I saw David being interviewed by a team of reporters. He was introduced as a specialist surgeon who had made his mark in heart surgery in the nation's leading teaching hospital. The questions were on his recent feat in his successful correction of abnormality in the heart of a patient who had been written off by most other specialists. The patient carefully recovered and was now back in his vocation as mechanic. I was amazed when I was amazed. I was pleasantly surprised from the interview. It became clear that he had experienced a surge in intellectual prose late in his secondary school's career and zoomed into and through the university as a medical student. Thereafter, it had been one major achievement after the other from him in his chosen field. So first of all, that is the scamming. We read through to get the basic idea or the general idea. And here the general idea was someone who was weak in school, and now the person is now a medical or a specialist in heart surgery. That is the basic idea. Then let's move on to scan. Here we are going to read it carefully so as to help us answer the questions that the text demand. We are going to read it carefully to answer questions that the text demands. So we read it once again, this time very carefully. So I'm reading it again. The case of David Akinde drives home the point that nobody should be written off as a failure as long as he has not died. As far as I can recall, he was one of the weakest in class throughout our primary school career. Right from the second grade, he was the butt of most of our jokes. Indeed, whenever the teacher referred a question to him, most of us waited eagerly to have a good laugh. But we all admire him for two things. For one thing, he was the only one who never wrote with the right hand, as he was a complete southpaw. Then he endured all jokes cheerfully, and indeed referred to him as Mr. Why-Hurry, forever sociable. He was a friend to everybody who came close enough. Not surprising, we left him behind in primary school as he could not get admitted to any of the secondary schools to which he took an examination. Then, that was why from the time I entered the secondary school, I lost contact with him. Nor did any of my mates whom I closely associated with ever mention meeting him anywhere. As far as most of us were concerned, David had faded away into obscurity. I imagine that he must have ended up in one of the low-grade vocations, since he was at least good in handicraft. The next part, please. Then a few months ago, 38 years after I last saw him in a primary school, while I was watching a 9 o'clock television network program, I saw David being interviewed by a team of reporters. He was introduced as a specialist surgeon who had made his mark in heart surgery in the nation's leading teaching hospital. The questions were on his recent fate in his successful correction of abnormality in the heart of a patient who had been written off by most other specialists. The patient fully recovered and was now back in his vocation as a mechanic. I was amazed. I was pleasantly surprised. From the interview, it became clear that he had experienced a surge in intellectual prowess late in his secondary school career and zoomed into through the university as a medical student. Thereafter, it had been one major achievement after the other for him in his chosen field. So here we read it carefully and we noticed some of the words being underlined. So here we are going to ask the questions, the set of questions that the text demand us. The set of questions that the text demand us. One, we have, what evidence is there that the writer is not a young person? When we were dealing how to answer comprehension questions, we said that we should answer questions that can be derived directly. That is the first one. So here, what is the evidence that the writer is not a young person? This question the answer can be derived straightly from there. From what two things was David Akinde admired by others in the primary school? This is also there. Why could he not move into secondary school then along with the others? This one too, we can find it there. Then we move on to what did the writer assume had been the fate of David after leaving the primary school? So these are the questions. Then we move on to E. Explain in your own words the following expressions as used in the passage: drives home, written off, made his mark. Then we move to F. For each of the following words, find another word or phrase which means the same and which can be replaced as it's used in the passage. So here, the word you are going to choose, the word must be fit into the passage when we are using it. So these are the questions the text demands us to answer. And of course, we are going to answer them based on the text. We are going to use the text to answer them. We've read the first one to get the general knowledge. Then we read it again carefully so that it can help us answer the questions. Now we are convinced with ourselves that we can answer the questions. So we move on to how these questions can be answered. How the questions can be answered. We take question 1. The question 1 asks us, what evidence is there that the writer is not a young person? What evidence is there that the writer is not a young person? And of course, we read it in the later part that 38 years after I saw him. So 38, someone who is 38 is not a young person. Of course, the person is now a grown man. So we can now say that 38 person is a young. So 38 years after I last saw him, be the answer. Then we move on to B. For what two things did David Akinde admired by others in the primary school? For what two things did David Akinde admire by others in the primary school? So here we read it, and people like him for some things he does. That is the one. He wrote with his left hand. He was writing with his left hand. That make people admire him. Then he was also friendly. That is, he was sociable. He was able to connect with everybody in the school. No matter his level, he was able to connect with everybody in the school. So he was sociable. Then again, he endured all jokes cheerfully. He endured all jokes cheerfully. When a teacher asks him questions, the classmates will be waiting just to laugh. Upon all this laughing, he never gave up and he never gets angry. So this makes people like him or admire him for what? So he was writing with the left hand, he was sociable, and he endured all jokes cheerfully. Then let's move on to C. Why could he not move to secondary school then along with others? Why could he not move to secondary school then along with others? Then the answer is he could not get admitted to any of the secondary schools to which he took an admission. When he wrote the entrance exams, he could not pass. So they left him there. He could not continue along with them as their peers or as the classmates were moving forward. Then we move to D. Why did the writer assume had been the fate of David after leaving the primary school? When someone is not good in class, definitely we all think low of the person. We will all presume the person will end up being a trader, the learning apprenticeship. We would then that. So the same is here. Here the same. People think because he didn't get admission to the university or to the secondary school, they think low of him. Here he could have ended up in one of the low grade vocation. since he was good with the hands. Then we move on to E. Explain in your own words. This is where students find it difficult in answering. Explain in your own words the following expression as used. Take note, as used in the passage. As used in the passage. So we have drives home. When drives home, meaning he shows, gives, establish. So this can be what we are asking. And make sure, take note, that now or the verb is in the present state. Is in the present tense. So the answer you are going to give must also be in the present tense. So drives. Drives is a third person singular. Drives is a third person singular. So the drives here is a present. So we are talking of present. The answers you are going to give must also be in the present. So drives home. We have shows. We have gives. We have establishes. These are what can be fit into the passage. Then we have written off. Written off. Written is in the participle form, so the answers must also be in the participle form. So written can be replaced with declared, it can be replaced with tagged, and also assumed. Then we move on to made his mark. Made his mark. That is when they made his mark, we are implying that made name, that is the person became famous, the person became well known. Then we move on to F. F2, for each of the following words, find another word or phrase which means the same. That is the main point, the same, and which can be replaced it as it is used in the passage. So what you're going to put there must be able to replace it. When we take the actual word from there, it must be replaceable. So here we have the cheerfully, and make sure cheerfully is an adverb because of the ly. It's an adverb. So the answers you are going to give must also be in the adverbial state. So we have cheerfully, and cheerfully we can have happily, we can have joyfully, we can have merrily. That is it. Then we go to sociable. Sociable. So when someone is sociable, the person is friendly, the person is outgoing, and the person is cordial. Then we have our last one, that is imagine. When you are imagine, you are assuming, and the imagine is in the past. So you must assume, you can presume, and believe. All these can be fit in the imagine. Then we go to vocation. Vocation. Vocation, we talk in terms of trade or in terms of apprenticeship. This is what can be fit into the passage. Then the last one being achievement. The last one being achievement. Achievement, we can have attainment, we can have accomplishment, we can have success and triumph and realization. Please, this realization is the American realization. So if you put S there, it's accepted. If you write Z, it's accepted. This is how we answer a comprehension question. This is how we answer a comprehension questions. And you know, English, the part A, part B, part C, and the last one being D, carries 70 marks. Part A, part B, part C, carry 70 marks. So if you want to get English A, at least you should get 65. 65 will help you get the A. Then we move. Let's talk a bit about literature, since today is Friday, and you know Fridays are for literature. Okay, so we will end here. We will talk about the literature next week, but see you same time, and try to answer the questions before we come. See you later. Bye. Abundant Grace International School, we are located right in Obuasi, precisely BDM. The school has a number of facilities that aid in learning. We have qualified and trained teachers who are ready and willing to assist the children. The school has many facilities such as the ICT laboratory. We also have a science laboratory. We also have a library. The school has a number of buses which convey the children from their various destinations to the school premises. We have the football team, we have the drama group, we have a lot, and the school is based on the Christian principles. For more inquiries, you can call this number 0541 310 901 0541 670772. Abundant grace, in God we trust.